Yo, 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 everyone. I should be live now. Let me do a double check and go to this YouTube domain. Nope. It's taking me to somewhere different. That is not good. Let me try this again. Make sure I've got the right thingamybobbies. La 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 la. Yeah, that one's set up how I want it to. Come over to here, click over onto the live stream. No, not yet. Don't end that stream. Copy that link. Has that link changed? No, should be the same link. Clicking onto it now. Looks like it's working. Yeah, there we go. Hear that on my own computer. Good. Let me just see. It's going to be a solo episode today, everyone. Oh, yeah, that's why it's... wonder why that hasn't updated. Should have updated. I was clicking on a very old link. 26th of the 4th, yeah. Maybe my Discord's not updating or something. Maybe that's why. Okay, well, I shared the correct one, so that should be good. Yeah, some big news coming on the way related to what I'm wearing on my head at the moment, but also some news that is slightly outside of that. There we go. Yeah, got that rocking up and looking good. So I'll jump over to hopefully I've got my keyboard shortcuts set up. Hola, Patricia. It's going to involve some news involving your son and maybe even like a little baby girl. Who knows? But yeah, I believe I've got all of this set up pretty good. This is looking much, much better than it was the other week. And so I should be able to transition between them. I've got all of those keyboard shortcuts set up. It's almost 7. I think I've posted to the places I want to. I suppose I can share it to one more place. Share this, copy link, and paste this onto over here. And I should be able to see all the images come up as well. Yeah, here we go. Oh, I can see it's just gone live to 7 because I have yellow screen on my phone, orange screen, whatever it is. And feels like joining. Cool. Okay, so it is 7 o'clock. So I will come over to here and ask my last question. Close that. Do you think Australian wildlife is actually dangerous for kids? There we go. Cool. And I should be able to see that chat as it pops up. And then I should be able to see those images. Cool. All right, everyone. I think I'm going to kick us off. And I'll change the screen. That stream should have changed a while ago. Why hasn't it? Oh, I can see it's rather delayed. Okay, but I think over here it's looking better. Oh, no. Click back onto here. Click onto this one. Yep, correct screen is up there. Let's just make sure that my voice is coming through. Yep, beautiful. Excellent. All right, here we go, everyone. Starting the podcast off. And there we go. We all can be mortals. Mere Mortals! Welcome everyone to another episode of the Mere Mortals Musings. Today it is going to be a solo episode with just Kyron in here, and you better get used to that, and I've got some reasons for that why coming up. Today is Wednesday, the 3rd of May, and yeah, as I mentioned, it's going to be a solo-sode, and there's no Juan here. And now, why? Why is Juan letting down the Mere Mortals? This is ridiculous. Well, he's got a little baby on the way. And in fact, right as we speak, right as I'm recording, he should be in the hospital. I hope that's what he's doing, and being a good boy and supporting his partner there. So with all of that being said, I thought, okay, maybe we can do an episode related somewhat to the topics of childhood, of new babies, of being born in Australia, and even perhaps something that maybe Juan can't particularly contribute to because he didn't grow up, I suppose, here in Australia. Well, he moved here when he was 9 years old, but he didn't have the full experience, I should say. So yeah, Juan's got a baby coming, and what can she expect in the future growing up in Australia? How to survive the Australian wildlife, perhaps. Perhaps this is a video I can even make for her, and it would be useful for her. And I thought it might also be a chance for you to get to know me better as well, and some of the peculiarities of me. I hate that word, peculiarities. And of why the way I am. And I'll go up to maybe, I suppose, the time that I met Juan, which would be roughly that 9 years old. And then I think... then we could perhaps do an episode in the future of kind of like our friendship. Well, at 13, actually, that's when I met Juan. So let's get into my childhood, I suppose, and some of the things that were perhaps interesting about that, perhaps unique about that, and all that sort of good stuff. So I think my childhood was pretty standard, to be honest. And in fact, I think I'm absolutely one of the luckiest guys ever. Not everyone gets to say their parents nailed it. And my parents nailed it. Mum, absolutely loving, both high school teachers, both knew about kids and kind of how to handle them. Both appreciated the aspect of freedom. I know some people nowadays whose parents are very restrictive, even when they're in their, like late teens, early 20s, and they still have these very restrictive parents. My childhood was the exact opposite of that. I was basically given all the freedom that I wanted in the world. I could, hang out with friends very regularly. We were always out in the street. There was never any, really forcing me to do things that I didn't want to do. I always liked to read as a kid, which my parents encouraged. I'm a people pleaser. I would say that, and so. Basically, as I was growing up, and you'll see some photos of myself on your screen now, cherub little Kyron used to have this blonde hair, shockingly blonde hair, and blonde curly hair, in fact. And I was always, I suppose, a people pleaser, which is good when you're a kid, I think, because it makes adults like you. It caused me some problems a little bit later on in life, but we're talking about childhood, and so I think adults liked me. I never had any particularly bad experiences. And I think kids also liked me as well, because I would just kind of want to play what they would want to play. So there wouldn't be any real dramas or fights or anything like that caused by me, because, I was always just like trying to help people play the games, have fun and whatnot. So I grew up in suburbia in a cul-de-sac in the Logan area of Brisbane. So kind of imagine 30 minutes south of the actual kind of Brisbane city, kind of between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, I guess you'd say. Deep in the heart of suburbia, right near the Hyperdome, which is a big shopping center there. It's probably the better part of Logan, so I didn't have any, safety concerns growing up. You could go out to the park whenever. You could go out at night whenever. I've walked home many a time in the darkness through, random areas and always been totally fine. And I did have some encounters with animals, and I think animals are going to play a large part in this discussion as well. And I've got my little Australia beanie on at the moment, and with the kangaroo featured very prominently. And I think Australian wildlife is quite prominent, and maybe a lot of people from outside of Australia might think there's a lot of it, or you have a lot of encounters with that. I'll get onto that shortly, but I would say I did have some encounters with animals which shaped me a little bit. And one is my encounter with Cerberus. Indeed, I did meet the demon dog of hell. So this was, it's kind of like a classic story I always tell, and I've got a funny spin on it, how I there's two versions. There's my mum's version, and then there's the truth. And I usually start off with the truth, and it's this super exaggerated story of how I met Cerberus, the demon dog of hell. But in essence, I'll tell my mum's version for shortness sake, which was on my very first day of primary school. So I was maybe 6 years old, something like that. So probably the photo on the rightmost side of your screen, that was about the age I was then. And I was going to my first day of primary school, which was located really close to my house and my friend's house, Lachlan, who lived kind of on the above me, or behind me, I guess you'd call that, because we were located on the side of a hill. And his dog was Rosie, which was this kind of white, fluffy poodle, almost had hair identical to mine. And on my first day of primary school, myself, my mum, Lachlan, and his mum, we were all walking to school, and it's 600-meter walk or something like that. And apparently, due to the excitement, me running around as a kid, Lachlan running, Rosie was very excitable, one of those small kind of yappy dogs. She got very excited and bit me on the back of the heel, and I think there was just something. It's one of those weird ones where I look back and I go, was this emotionally scarring or not? Am I making a big deal out of this and then trying to explain other things that have happened to me since, or was this actually a big deal? I kind of vaguely recall it, but then again, I was 6 years old. I could absolutely be making up memories because I don't remember much before 6 years old, if anything. And ever since that day, apparently I was crying all day at school, traumatized from this vicious dog attack of Rosie, the Cerberus dog from hell. And the, I suppose, overwhelming thing that came from that was I was very uncomfortable around animals for quite a long time. And so I always was, I guess from then on, if I went over to friends' houses that have dogs, I'd kind of play with the dog, but I was never really comfortable with it jumping up on me. If it was a larger dog, of it licking me, which was just more of a sanitary thing, licking my face, things like that. And even as I grew up older and older, this never really went away. And I think it even kind of transferred onto other animals, particularly animals that could harm you in a kind of mauling sense, in a physical sense. Cats I was kind of okay with, but even then I think I'd been scratched by a cat once, and so I was a little bit hesitant around them. And so I've always been hesitant around animals, and even to this day, whilst better, I still keep a distance. I still have a bit of kind of, if I see someone and their dog, I don't instantly go to pat it because, you can put your hand down and get bitten. It's very unlikely, very, very unlikely, but I've always had that. So that was kind of one of my formative experiences, I suppose. But then there's this aspect of the animals in Australia, and this is kind of getting onto the discussion. What I want to focus on here is really environment of okay, what is an Australian childhood like? And this is just my experience. It could be very different for other people, but mine was filled with a lot of outdoor activities. My house, we had a backyard, and in this backyard, I have encountered a kind of, I don't know what you call it, a pit of snakes, a bunch of baby snakes that were right outside of our washing line. My mum actually found it, and then I kind of came and looked. Numerous grasshoppers, which what we used to do when we were kids was super sadistic. We would catch these grasshoppers, and me and my friends, my next door neighbors, we would catch them and then throw them into spider webs and watch as the grasshopper was struggling to get free. And whilst the spider came over and kind of injected it and then wrapped it up, we just found it fascinating. Ants, of course, once again, sadistic with the magnifying glass, burning stuff out in the backyard. But we also lived not even that close to a wildlife reserve or a national forest. It was probably a couple of 100 meters down the road. To get into our backyard, an animal would have to go through full suburbia of roads, of cars, cross multiple roads and cars, and long stretches of pavement to get into our backyard. But over the years, we have seen a koala in our backyard, multiple joeys, which are kind of like a smaller version of a kangaroo. Think maybe, half a meter to a meter high, that sort of deal. And even ticks. I have a story of when I was playing in my backyard once. There's this kind of real dense shrubbery section in the kind of uppermost back part, which my parents were never gardeners. That's the traumatic thing of my childhood. We never did any gardening. And I remember stomping around in there once, coming back home in the evening or after dark. And I was still in home. I was just in the backyard and then coming into the house, I should say. And I remember my ear hurting and I was scratching it a lot. And eventually my mum was like, "What are you doing? Like, stop scratching your ear." And then looked at it and basically I had a tick in there. And then unfortunately I had, through my scratching, cut it in half. And so apparently what this does is it makes it super, super difficult to get it out. And so we had to call in like a house doctor. He came and with, a specialized set of tweezers or needle or something, managed to get this tick out of my ear. But yeah, we even had ticks in the backyard. And so the Australian wildlife, for me at least, the childhood experience did involve just a lot of different animals. And there's I think from the podcast, I remember looking this up with Juan, I believe there is one dog for every 5 Australians. I believe that was, or 1 in 5 families in Australia has a dog. Maybe that's a bit more realistic statistic. And yeah, those which would probably also equal to about one in 5. Yeah, so there was just a lot of animals in my childhood, whilst also not having a tremendous amount to do with me personally. My parents, my mum grew up on a farm, and my dad grew up kind of just all over the place and had a lot of pets over the years. And both of them were just overlooking after animals. I think they had done it for such a large portion of their life. They were just like, no more animals. Maybe my dad was a bit more stricter on that than my mum. Mum, I think, believed she wanted to have a kid or a cat at some point, but dad kind of put the foot down and said no. And yeah, so I never actually had any pets for myself, not even goldfish or gerbils or hamsters or any of that sort of deal. Which I suppose would then get onto, well, why is there an obsession with animals? Why are there so many animal type things in Australia? And one of the things I remember is also connected with childhood is just the amount of TV shows that would involve animals. And I don't think that's changed now. When I look back at shows like Cheese TV, Feral TV, almost all of them that were kind of catchy and popular, I think involved animals of some sort. Nickelodeon has Cat Dog and whatnot, and that's an American show, and a lot of our media is imported from America, so there's kind of that aspect. But I think a lot of the Australian shows, who was maybe the most famous Australian, the one that most people knew, it was Steve Irwin. There was this cult-like fascination with him. I actually remember the day that he died, I was in high school, and kind of the news got spread around that Steve Irwin had died. No one really knew why or what from, because this was before social media and whatnot. So you didn't have all this instant access, and it came out later in the news. He'd been stung in the heart by a stingray. And I remember it was weird, because I remember being glad about it, because I was so sick of him. I was sick of this guy, Steve Irwin, because he was fucking everywhere. He was just on everything. And he definitely was, I believe, in a kind of Australian spokesman, and to kind of the rest of the world. So there was all this like, "G'day, how you going, mate? Oh, crikey." And I always felt it was kind of an act. Looking back now, I think, no, he probably was just this genuinely really enthusiastic guy. But back then I was sick of him for sure. And I think that goes to show just how much animals were a part of Australian culture. And if you ask people from overseas, what do they know about Australia? They're probably going to talk about the animals, the kangaroos. Oh, there's dangerous spiders there, the wildlife. The kangaroo, it's on everything. It's on our national airline. It's on our money. It's on the koala, the echidna. And I think this kind of gets into the aspect of why there is this obsession with animals. There are quite a lot of unique ones here. Obviously the kangaroo, the platypus, which is usually described as one of the weirdest animals in the world. It's a mammal, but it lays eggs. it's poisonous and it has sharp thorns. It's small and it's waterbound. It's got all these crazy things to do with it. And yeah, I think there's just so much of that is just focused on animals. Even on your screen now, what's the most probably popular TV show for kids? It could be Bluey. Bluey, which is this kind of dog character created here, and I believe he lives in Brisbane. I've never actually seen the show, so I don't know that much about it. But even this character of Bluey is at least a Brisbane or a Queensland sort of well-known thing, and I don't even watch TV shows or any TV shows, let alone children ones anymore. So there is this fascination and obsession, I think, with animals. Where does this come from? Well, obviously the environment as well. The environment, I think, here in Australia is just so much dictating of culture. So if you look at what's some of the gym. Why do we have so many gyms here in Australia? Well, it's warm out most of the year, and we have some really nice beaches, and so that dictates that people want to get that gym body, that good looking body to show off at the beach. So much of it is outdoor activities. Okay, you can play outdoors and do things outdoors here, so well, we're going to do outdoor stuff, and so that'll also dictate the kind of sporting nature. I think we play a lot of sports, and we have 4 bloody different types of football. There's rugby league, rugby union, AFL, Australian Football League, and then soccer football. And I have even seen people playing NFL gridiron football here before. So we have a fair few of them, Gaelic football even. And so what is also the reason for all of this? Well, there's a lot of greenery here in Australia, the variety. We're a very isolated country, so you can get all of these unique animals. And with the kind of country / continent, it being a country and a continent, we can kind of claim all of them, and they're all the Australian animals. And whereas in places like Europe, that it's kind of a sharing thing, and you don't really want to be sharing your national animal with another country. So here we can kind of claim all of them and be like Aussie pride, whereas other places in the world which have borders and whatnot, they kind of can't get away with that. So yeah, up to this point, I would just say, the Australian childhood is very much dictated by the environment. And so a lot of that is outdoors related because we have a very nice climate here. And then a lot of that is also dictated by animals or interacting with animals, because even though I think it's overblown, the amount of snakes and spiders that we have, look, we do have them, but you just don't encounter them in everyday life. The thing you need to look out for is redback spiders, which can appear in like under your chairs and and whatnot if you have a patio. But by and large, you don't encounter funnel web spiders or black mumbo snakes or any brown snakes. Yes, if you're going and hiking out and in ridiculous areas, but by and large, you don't really encounter that sort of stuff. So this is kind of a look at the past, I suppose. And after the Boostagram Lounge, I'll get into maybe more of what you can expect in the future and what Juan's little baby girl can expect. So there's a great time to move on to the Boostagram Lounge. So what is the Boostagram Lounge? Well, this is the section of the show where myself and Juan, we thank those who have been supporting the show in a monetary form, especially, but also people who perhaps have done things to help support us in any sort of manner. This is a value for value show, and so all this value that I'm providing now, the images, the tightness of the conversation, everything that I'm doing here, I do spend a lot of time and effort in creating, and I just ask that you provide that back in some form. And the Boostagram Lounge is where people who have been listening via a Podcasting 2.0 app, or who have managed to get a wallet and been able to boost in directly to us from a website or from the Podcast Index website. It's a way of them sending a message and saying thank you in a monetary form back to us. And so this is done through the power of Bitcoin and the power of Lightning. That sounds very complicated if you're a new person. No rush. No need to worry about it. You'll hear more about this if you continue listening to the show, and some ways that we can that you can help support us. So I'm going to just dive right into this, and I have a couple of make goods to do, in fact, because I missed a couple from the last week, and this was due to me changing around a lot of things. So one of the big news, I guess, from this last week or two is I have now fully changed the splits that are occurring in our feed. They used to all just be going through one place. This was Satoshi's stream. Unfortunately, a couple of missed boostergrams and whatnot, and some issues which I'm still having now, and we were having last week. But even though I did all of the changes, all of these backups, once again, if you're not using the backup, it's kind of pointless. So now I have 3 or 4 different ways that I can access all of these, and so through a combination of them all, I do hope to be able to get into them. Probably the easiest way I'm going to start off with is going into my Fountain wallet and just checking in here. So from April 29, I've got one split check for all the devs. You're all amazing. Thanks for working so hard. This was from myself. And I sent 1,000 sats because one of the ways that I am trying to help support this ecosystem and encourage everyone to get their share, their split, and because I've been in it so long, I've included basically a 1% split for all of the developers creating apps that I personally use and who I think are doing cool things. So there's a 1% split for Mitch Downey at Podverse. There's a 1% split for Stephen B at Curiocaster. 1% for Sam Sethi at Podfans. You can check that out as well. 4% split for Fountain because I'm using their service a lot. 1% split for the Podsage, Dave Jones. 1% for Podfriend. This is Martin Muritzen. And I think I have another one in there as well, but I can't remember for sure. So that was just me testing that out. And guess what? All of them worked. Boom! I have a message here from McIntosh, who boosted in 4,200 sats. Actually, before I get to that, I did see Dave. The other week we said, oh no, even Dave stopped sending in his regular boost. Wrong. This was wrong. He definitely sent it in, and it was just missed once again because the setup wasn't correct. So I have to contribute him for 2 rush boosts, which would be 12,211 or 221. I can't remember. I can't actually remember the numbers that he was sending in all the time. Apologies, Dave. I actually can look that up here. 12,112. So 2 of those to be attributed to Dave Jones. So that would be 24,224. Much appreciated, Dave. Thank you so much, man. And some of that's going back directly to you when you when you boost in. I have one here from McIntosh, who boosted in 4,200 sats on April 29, and he says, interesting discussion. Sorry, the booster down. Pretty sure it's across the board. You are correct, McIntosh. Not sure why I didn't boost the last episode, but I suspect it got lost in the sea of podcasts. I wonder, you all talk philosophy and morals quite a bit. I would be curious as to what you would consider your world views. I don't think I have ever heard you summarize that. How do you arrive at your moral philosophical framework? McIntosh, 2,100 times 2 to make up for last week. Oh, thank you so much, McIntosh. First of all, don't worry about missing boosts. I do it as well. I try and keep on top of it, but the whole point of this is it's not meant to be a you have to do it sort of thing. If we said nothing interesting last week, that's totally fine, but I do appreciate the make good. Look, it's going to probably take a while to get through my worldviews. I did do an episode which I called mere mortal philosophy, or it was kind of around general life views. It was a full episode that I did sometime. I'll see if I can bring it up right now. What I can generally say is my worldview is if you try and people should be able to do whatever the hell they want as long as they are not interfering with other people and kind of causing harm to others. So all sorts, that puts me, I suppose, almost on the very, very liberal end of things, or it's complicated because here in Australia, liberal means right wing. On the left wing side of things, I guess, in terms of I think anyone should be able to do whatever the hell they want, and as long as it's not harming other people. I think human psychology is very powerful, and that we are largely determined already. So I'm more of a deterministic. I believe very much in the methodology of science, not necessarily the actual results and statistics. I think those can be manipulated. I think those can be corrupted and whatnot. But the overall scientific method played out over tens of years or multiple years, the kind of peer reviewed, not even peer reviewed, the ability for myself to be able to test whatever someone else's other claims are. That is that kind of method. I should be able to test it for myself. And so should this person, and we should all get the similar results. So I'm very much a fan of the scientific method. What other important things are there? Monetarily wise, I would say I'm very, I think it's ridiculous to be able to run deficits year on year. And I don't know how governments do that. I think the whole financial system is wonky as hell, and that something has got to break at some point. I don't see how you can just continue on with printing money and things like that. I'm just trying to look for this episode in particular, McIntosh. So I had an episode here called Defining Your Life Principles, Rules of Thumb to Live By. And so I published that one about 6 months ago was that. And that was episode number, just waiting for it to load as we speak. It was another solo episode. So this is just my kind of like life principles. It doesn't include Juan's. And this was episode number, here we go, 336. And so if you streamed live on 5th of October 2022, so it would have been probably published on the 7th of October. Some of the things I said in there, one of the most important things in life is to keep sane and not to become cynical. I think that's probably one of the only things you really need to do in life. The world doesn't care, but people do. So I think, the world can be very harsh, cruel, unforgiving, and that there is no guarantees of an afterlife. There are no guarantees. I'm probably pretty agnostic in terms of religious views. Consciousness, I think, is one of the most important things, and that will take a whole long time to get into. So I will cap it there for the moment. But thank you, McIntosh, and maybe I'll reach out to you privately at some point. I got a boost here for 100 sats on April 30th from Bitcoinplusfood. And so he was actually looking at an episode from long ago, which was The Downfall of Crypto, the best arguments on why it will all go to zero. So this was a kind of devil's advocate series that Juan and I did to ask, what is all of this stuff? What are arguments? And he says, interesting episode. Once you get your head around what is money, what is fiat, it seems really simple to grasp that Bitcoin is gold 2.0 on the blockchain, and it is a day-to-day payment system and a store of value. The fiat mindset underpins the rest of crypto, i.e. building on top of today's financial system. Crypto propagates the destructive economic forces crushing us all. Bitcoin sorts the money, build crypto solutions. On top of that sound money, sort the world. The rest is noise. Cheers. I'm becoming closer and closer to that mindset. I'm really curious to what I'll think in 5-10 years. I believe, if I had to guess, one of the reasons that a very long-term supporter, Peter, suddenly stopped sending in messages was because I think I had Hosky on, which I still think was a fucking hilarious laugh. And I think I did a good job of making sure that this was not a bag pumping sort of discussion. It was kind of, I was really very interested in the paradoxical nature of why people are attracted to these things and whatnot. But in any case, I could see that in 5 years' time, looking back on that discussion and going, oh, yeah, I probably wouldn't do that nowadays. But yeah, there's just some interesting things that doesn't come from other areas of life. So So Bitcoin, yes, the boring, standard, make the world a better place sort of thing. But I think the fun aspect, I don't see much of that in Bitcoin. When I go to Bitcoin meetups and whatnot, I wouldn't say it's the most fun experience, but it is very educational and it is very interesting. But I don't come away from that going like, that was really fun going to that. And I think fun is very important. So yeah, just a little bit there. I had Cole McCormick. Whoa, 1st of May, boosting in 15,555 sats. Love you guys. Let the value flow to you. Love heart. Boom, boom. Cole, I feel it, man. Shout out to America Plus. I saw he got a massive baller boost. It's been hovering around on my Fountain activity chart for a while. Good on you. Good on you, Cole. I'm glad that happened to you, because I know we certainly saw a boost of people sticking around and listening to the show after Chris Lass from Jupiter Broadcasting, and I figured out what Lass is, live Linux action show. Chris Fisher, he boosted in us and gave that. So thank you very much, Cole, for that. And I'm so happy for you that you're kind of getting some success as well as super cool. This isn't particularly a boostergram, but I now have access to some comments which are kind of cool because I never really saw them before. And so this was Bad Career Advice Chad, fucking legend name. And I've been creating a lot of clips recently, and this was a clip I had taken from my chat with Peter Winkler, who, once again, very clippable. A lot of like little funny clips that I created from that, because we're talking about conspiracy theories. He's a comedian, or part-time comedian, so he's got a very funny way of framing things and putting short one-liners out and whatnot. And he was talking about how the pyramids had a Pizza Hut. And as he said, and Bad Career Advice Chad says, as long as it was classic deep dish Pizza Hut, new recipe is hot garbage. Come at me, bro. That's probably an American thing, because I don't think I've tried that before. Then he also says, for another clip, and this is on the monetizing your hobby that I created ages ago, the only way to do this is to name your Adorbs dog hobby, create an Instagram, and then spend all the proceeds on therapy after learning it costs more to insure your cash cow pet than it does to insure you. Dude, so I actually met a fair while ago. This was in 2017. I was doing some promotional work, and it was kind of like I was being an extra on set. And so this was for the Paralympic Games, which was being held here in Brisbane. And I just had to be a person in the stand of the Chandler Swimming Centre, and we were all like cheering as an Australian athlete was going by or something. They then, take us, a video of us, and then somehow they, through magic, they add more of us in, or other people or whatnot. In any case, there was a guy I met there who was pretty fascinating, because he had a sausage dog. And he was telling me how his whole life now is kind of based around the sausage dog. The sausage dog, and because he was the Instagram handler owner of this sausage dog, and it had an absurd amount of people following it, hundreds of thousands, I believe. And he was, I don't think we got into the specifics of insuring your cash cow sausage dog, but I can kind of see how that would be would be a thing. If you're making bank from being the manager of a sausage dog, perhaps insurance is something that's kind of necessary. Especially if you're trying to get like a home loan or a mortgage or something, and all your money's coming from a dog. 100%, I could see it being that. Now, I think there was also another message or two coming from the Albi side of things, and I'm not sure why this didn't show up in Fountain. So I did get the sats from Cole there. I did get the one from McIntosh as well. Was there any others in here? Scrolling down, I see a lot of sats rolling in of people streaming in as well, which is beautiful. Thank you so much for everyone streaming in. Once again, I might be able to start calling you out if I just start clicking on some of these, and I can kind of see who. So I did see Dave was streaming in. Bitcoinplusfood was streaming in. Someone from Castomatic, who I'm not sure of. Quite a few people here. Daniel Cook at Daniel_Cook. Thank you so much, legend. Quite a few people coming in and doing that. So. Another one from McIntosh 6 days ago. He says, great discussion, gents. I used to do a lot of clipping on podcasts on Fountain. Need to get back to doing that. I also need to be intentional about clipping my own show. Look at that, McIntosh. You did boost in. So no worries, my friend. Thank you so much for doing that. I'll make sure to send you a double one back sometime to thank you for that. Boom. Big Boostagram Lounge. Thank you, everyone. This is fucking awesome. I love this. It's after a couple of kind of, frustrating weeks of things feeling like they weren't happening and whatnot. it's so encouraging to get support back like this. It really does mean the world to myself and to Juan. I'm trying to make this become my kind of full-time hobby, my gig, my lifestyle, I suppose. And I 100% acknowledge I need to put in more work, get in more interesting guests, make it easier for people to be able to boost and whatnot. And there are some things I'm working on. And I might even do a small housekeeping section right at the very end to address a couple of those things. But sending in some sats our way really, really does mean the world to me. And I will be sending them back to you. So when Fountain has the ability for me to not have to put in fiat and I can promote the show using sats and you can listen and get some, that'll be one way. When Podfans does it and Sam Sethi gets onto it, that'll be another way. I will talk about it on the show and I will let you know. And so you, not only will it be a way for new people to discover us, but it'll be a way for me to thank you, the listener who was already tuning in and who maybe would listen anyway without getting some. I want to send some back to you. So I will do that. Much appreciated. Boostagram Lounge. This is the fucking best. Woo! Juan's daughter, please ignore the swearing. It's bad for you. Don't listen to those things. Oh, geez. So let's get on to some other topics here. So a bit more forward focus for the future. So as I said, Juan is hopefully having a baby right as I speak, right as I record now, and fingers crossed that everything goes well, safe and sound, and finally find out her name, which he has not told us. I can't tell if it's because he was hiding it or because him and his partner hadn't decided on it yet. But in either case, he's coming in here, and he's not coming in here. I'm creating something here, which was what will change for her in the future. What will change for Juan's little baby girl. Repeat it again, Kyron. How many? So this was probably one in the chat. I can't remember. Not sure what you're referring to, Juan. Oh, geez. Once again, this is kind of a new way of doing things, of me doing solo episodes. And he says, as you speak, we are in the midst of it all. It's happening, people. It's happening. Come on, baby. Go, go, go. Oh, beautiful. That's awesome, one. All right. Well, I can tell you this one. What's going to be the biggest change for your baby girl? I think the technology. It's the obvious, easiest answer. What will be the biggest change for a kid, being born now compared to my childhood from 25 years ago? The technology. The technology is 100% changed, and it's the technology that is making its way down to the individual level. Technology has always been advancing, telephones and things like this, of telegraphs, of the steam press, of the printing press, of locomotion, of trains and all that. But a lot of that was it was big. It was these huge, massive things. You can see it shrinking and shrinking, where these devices that we have that are basically plugged into us now, and by that I'm referring to the phone or perhaps the watch, and perhaps even in the future some sort of glasses type deal. You can see that these are becoming more and more individualized. They're more and more closer and personal to us, and giving us, I suppose, more autonomy as me as the individual. With a phone, I can communicate with people. I can take videos and audio. I can transmit messages. I think that technology will change a lot, and that'll be the biggest change. But you also can't rule out war. So I think those would probably be the two biggest ones. Climate change, if the climate is changing, it is only by several degrees. It's not going to affect Australia that much. And the impacts of those changes, I believe, are kind of overblown. But in any case, I think that will be the biggest thing that will change for her. Perhaps the learning systems as well, and how it is that she learns compared to I did. For example, we had computers in school. They weren't that great. We didn't have any tablets at that time. That seems to be the kind of norm now. And I'm not sure how much kids write in books nowadays. I believe it's significantly less than it used to be. And probably a portion of that was supercharged by COVID as well. So I think that would probably be the biggest change for her. the environment is very unlikely to alter in the next 5 or 10 years. So I imagine she will have a very similar childhood in terms of the outdoor experiences. There will still be animals around. There will still be a lot of nature. The Australians, the kind of Australian dream, our culture does have this very big focus on kind of the backyard. You know, you own a house and you have a backyard. A lot of people do have apartments, sure, but I don't know what the percentages are, but I would be willing to bet some money that more Australians live in places with a backyard than Chinese people do, for example, who I imagine living more in apartments and whatnot. So that is very unlikely to alter, and therefore the amount of spiders. I've written here warm with a chance of spiders. So I think she'll live most likely in Brisbane, where Juan is from, where his family and all this sort of stuff is from, and it's unlikely they're going to move to anywhere else in the world. This is all assuming she's growing up here in Australia. But even then, I doubt it very much if they move to further south. If anything, it'll probably be further north. And I can 100% imagine her having a childhood and knowing Juan as well, of being outdoors a lot, of running around, of kicking balls, of playing sports, of doing all those sorts of things. So that aspect of childhood will very much stay the same. I think Aussie culture won't change as much either. And just based on Aussie culture now, am I seeing the kids doing anything different than what I'd used to do? No, I see them out skateboarding. I see them playing around. I see them trying to do handstands when I'm doing handstands, and you know, they get the inspiration. I see families getting together. I see a very strong emphasis on having friends and whatnot, of people who you can count upon. I don't see any massive changes in culture that would indicate to me that she would have a bizarre experience. The only thing would perhaps be, because she will be kind of half Latino, half Australian, and I'm not actually sure what Juan's partner is, where like her heritage wise, but the only thing is that maybe she will have a more multicultural friendship group. That'll be hard to beat mine, because mine literally is in high school Vietnamese people, Colombian people, Fijian people, Indian people, Fijian Indian people, Papua New Guinean, and one white, one Caucasian. So top that, Juan's kid. But yeah, that's it. And Juan does have a lot of comments here in this section, so I'll read them out now. And so he says, he agrees with the culture will change less, but for sure the pace of technology and society's expectations will change. War can't be ruled out. History rhymes, and people can sometimes lose themselves and forget the pain war can bring. And then he says he's getting back into it, back into baby coming out mode. So thank you, Juan, for that. Little bit of insight there as well. Yeah, I think there's a good place to summarize. So in summary, in terms of environment, I think it's hard to go past Australia. You know, maybe this is just a plug for Australia. If you want to raise a kid, Australia's a pretty damn good place. We don't have volcanoes, we don't have earthquakes, we don't have tornadoes. We have the minor flooding and droughts, but even then it's more, you know, this will affect the crops or the economy. It's not going to kill us, because there is generally enough water and food to go around, even in the most direst of circumstances. The worst thing I think that we have here is skin cancer. You know, the odds, I think we're the skin cancer capital of the world, Queensland or Brisbane, and that is a problem. Thankfully for her, she will have probably the dark Latino skin from Juan, or at least a portion of that. So she'll be a little bit protected from that. But, you know, we've got a nice mix of social health care, so people don't fall too far down the cracks like they seem to do in America, whilst also retaining the freedom of religion, freedom of movement, freedom to just be outside and whatnot. Australia is Patricia comes into the chat. She says, Australia is a beautiful place with an exclamation mark. And from my meager goings around the world, I would 100% agree with that. And I think it's a very good place to grow up. Living just in a good climate for me seems like a safe option as well. So in terms of just, if you could pick to be born somewhere else in the world, you have no filial ties anywhere. What is the greatest chance that you will have a healthy, productive, beautiful childhood? And let's look over the last couple of 100 years as well. Probably being born in a climate which is nice, which is amenable to human life is good, i.e. not too hot, not too cold. We don't have the raging deserts of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, nor do we have the frigid climates of Norway and the Arctic Circle. Australia is basically in a nice little middle zone, especially here in Brisbane, where in winter it gets down to a couple of degrees at night at the coldest. And if you went a little bit further north up to Cairns area, it probably doesn't even get down to that. So in terms of, if war was to outbreak, if coronavirus, another virus was to decimate the Australia, population, if 2/3 of the planet or technology got destroyed from a solar flare or things like that, Australia is a good, nice place to kind of be in, just because, well, at least you're not going to freeze to death if you don't have power for 2 or 3 days. You're not going to die of dehydration or sunburn or whatever out in the desert because of a drought or something like that. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. All of this discussion about the childhood, about Australia and whatnot, it doesn't even cover kind of 75% of what her childhood is going to be like, because generally it's 50-50 between environment and genetics. So her genetics, sorry, little baby Juan, but 50% of your problems are caused by Juan and by his partner Jazz. So blame them for that. And then of the environment, I would even say 50% of that is going to be the environment that Juan raises her in. So his, methodologies of parenting, the way he interacts with her, the friend groups and choices that are kind of dictated upon her based on where they choose to live and whatnot. So much of that is going to be dictated by things outside of her control, but sort of within Juan's control. So, only 25% of her childhood is really going to be dictated on the environment, i.e. the in general sunny climate that we have here in Brisbane, in Queensland, in Australia, and then the meager amount of interactions she will have with spiders and other snakes and things, which will probably inform her. I think a lot of kind of, there is an Australian attachment to these animals. So that is my summary, and thank you everyone for joining in. I'll go into a little bit of a housekeeping section here before I finish up with the value for value. So the kind of like, I suppose housekeeping to do is, yes, please bear with me. There is a lot of changes that I'm still trying to make. The website has finally been updated with the latest boost results, and I'm kind of trying to change that up to highlight people a little bit more. But if you are wondering where you are on the kind of leaderboard, how far you are away from the 100,000 sats, which will then be the trigger point for us to send you through a shirt, please just jump onto meremortalspodcast.com/supporter, and you will see that in there. So I'm fixing up that. I'm trying to create a way where you'll be able to boost to us through the site as well. So that'll be very cool. I'm spending as much time as I can creating clips of to be shared not only on the more traditional social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, not Discord, Facebook, that sort of deal, but also within some of these apps like Fountain and whatnot. I'm trying to keep abreast of all the new technology, of making sure that things are looking as best as possible. I'm now starting to add in transcripts after idiot Kyron not realizing that for the past year and a bit, I could have been creating transcripts directly from Premiere Pro. Idiot! but I've got onto that now. And so I'm not sure if I'll go back and redo all of them. Perhaps if it's not too much effort, I might go and do that. We'll see. I gotta find that. But there is a lot of changes I'm trying to create, of adding things in, moving things around, obviously playing with the show format. Unfortunately, I've had a couple of last minute cancellations this last week in terms of scheduling for conversations. So I'm not guaranteeing that there's going to be one out on this Sunday. It happens. This show is mostly between Juan and myself, and guests coming on is kind of like an additional bonus. It's not the core of the show. Over the coming months, we'll have to see how much time Juan has to spend on these, and how much he can participate and whatnot. And so maybe the show will gradually shift to a bit more of that. But my focus pretty much at the moment is 100% on getting the Mere Mortals Musings, these themed episodes done, where it's going to be myself mostly for the next little while at least. But Juan, when he has the capacity to join back in. So definitely on that. And the Value for Value podcast, restarting that up in this next month. That is going to be another big one. I might be doing some live streams from that onto YouTube on the Mere Mortals podcast channel. So that perhaps will be an extra little bit of additional content, which will be coming out, which will be on the Mere Mortals YouTube. And then I will be heavily referencing and telling people in this audio form as well, go check out the Value for Value show, because I am going to be trying to create some really cool stuff from that, I hope. But yeah, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see with that. So we'll come into the last section here, the Value for Value. What I mentioned that just then. What is Value for Value? In its simplest form, Value for Value is a model where I provide value to you in this form of entertainment, of education, of understanding things, of perhaps some new ideas and whatnot. And I just ask that you provide the value back. And that is the extent of the model. There's a lot of nuances to that. What I would say is, why am I doing this? Well, because on this show, you will never hear advertising. You will never hear sponsorships. And I want to keep it as free from undue influence as possible. I want my thoughts to be as clear and censorship free as possible. And this includes self-censorship, of a lot of which can come from accepting money from other people in a very strict binding format. You know, you talk about these things, you promote this on the show, we provide you with money. I don't want to have any of that. I want every dollar, every Satoshi that comes in, that comes to me, I want that to be a completely 100% voluntary choice, and I want you to feel good about doing it because you are supporting the show. So that is the Value for Value model, and that's how I'm going to run. Sure, it's going to be a lot more of a longer process, and it might not make as much as I could have at the end, but that's not really what this is about anyway. The podcast is about exploring ideas of bettering myself. It is somewhat a self-development podcast. It is somewhat of an educational one, because we are trying to teach you about new technologies and the cool things that are happening, and somewhat staying abreast of the news. It's also a journey of myself and Juan it's a whole lot of things bundled up into one. So welcome to the journey. How can you provide value back? Well, you can do it by, first and foremost, probably the easiest way is by sharing this with a friend. So if you have a friend who wondered what Australian childhood is like, if you have a friend who is debating coming to Australia and maybe what sort of childhood they can expect for their kid, look, send them this episode and say, you might enjoy this episode. Another way of providing back, ideas or of value back to us is through the talent section. So if you notice that the transcripts are of poor quality and that they're consistently misspelling my name wrong, or something about it is wrong. If you notice that I have, put up a crappy image and the image isn't as great as it possibly could be, or it's not showing up in one of the apps as well as you think it would. If you notice that I am doing this clicking thing with my tongue, which I tend to do every now and then, I noticed that recently. If you notice that and it's bugging you, please let me know. Feedback of all sorts is 100% appreciated. Sharing clips of the show on any of these, podcasting apps. If you are on Apple or Spotify or Google Podcasts, I would just recommend try out one of these new apps, because there are a whole bunch of features which you get in them which you won't get on Spotify and Apple and whatnot. You will get images that I have uploaded into the chapters. You will have chapters which are clickable, so you can skip through boring sections or sections you didn't like or didn't want. You will have links in all of these chapter sections which will take you to interesting places. If it's referencing Bluey, there's going to be a link to Bluey in that, and in the dog, and you might go, what? I've never heard of that. Boom, you click on the link, it's done. You're going to have transcripts in there now, so you will be able to have live captions, accessibility. If I am slurring my words, if all of this is sounding crap to you, and if English is your second language and you want to understand a bit better, you will see that in the app, but you will not see this in Apple and Spotify and a lot of these legacy type apps. You will have to go to a new one. What's a new one? Well, you can go to podcastapps.com and choose one of the ones from there. Some of the ones that I personally use and recommend are Fountain. I recommend and use Podverse, and I have been testing out Podfans, and I have been liking that as well. So there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do to provide value back. And then the final and most important one for me is this direct feedback within the app. So those apps that I just mentioned, you can send a message to me and it will appear to me in multiple different ways. I always read them out on the live episode of every Wednesday, which then gets released on the Friday. So if you want to participate live, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And this message you can send as little or as much as you want. We don't have a cap here on the podcast. So if you send in 10 sats, I will read it out. If you send in 100,000 sats, I will read it out, but I will thank you more profusely than the person who sent in 10 sats. Satoshi is a portion of Bitcoin. 100 million of them are equal to 1 Bitcoin. So the current conversion rate at the moment is 100,000 sats would be 45 roughly Australian dollars. So if you send in 1,000 sats, that is sending in 45 cents. I think you can afford that. It just takes a little bit of time, effort, and energy to understand how to do that. So all of that is being said, thank you so much for joining in for another Mere Mortals podcast. I really do hope you enjoy. I do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. I hope that day is in Australia, because rock on Australia. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. Ciao for now, everyone. Until the next episode. Karen out. Peace. Okay. How was that? I thought that was a relatively decent solo-sode. I did forget to click a couple of things, so unfortunately the screen didn't keep up as quickly, and I forgot to click V to go to the value for value one right here at the end. That's all right. Patricia, thank you so much for joining in. Juan, thank you so much for joining in as well. Everyone else, if you are still listening in and you want to chat with me, I will be in the Discord, Mere Mortals podcast Discord, which you can find the link down in basically anywhere that we post stuff, but especially on YouTube. And yeah, that'll be it for now. See you later.